Good morning, BYW students. This is a Zoom review quiz for your quiz. So like today during Zoom, we're going to go over this handout. But if you missed Zoom, here's the quiz review gone over. This will be very similar to what your quiz will look like tomorrow. It's going to be some givens, and then you're going to have to make a statement and then a reason. I'll tell you exactly how many statements and reasons I want you to write. So let's get down to business. Today's learning target is I can apply my knowledge of geometric terms by marking an image and forming a conclusion. Again, if you notice, this has been the same learning target for 3 days. The reasoning why is because that's exactly what we're doing. We are marking an image and forming a conclusion. So our first given, D is the midpoint of BC. The first thing I do is I highlight my keyword of midpoint. And what a midpoint does is it breaks a segment into half. So if I look at this, D is sort of chopping BC into half. So if I look, I can say that BD is congruent to DC. So all I can say about a midpoint is that it creates two congruent segments. So I can say BD congruent to DC, and my reasoning is a midpoint creates two congruent segments. Ooh, where's my typer? Sorry. What's going on? So many errors. 1 second. A midpoint creates two congruent segments. And you can abbreviate the word midpoint. Notice, I say midpoint. I don't say altitude. I don't mention anything about perpendicular. And the reason why is because there's nothing mentioned in my givens about it. So all I can do is say that a midpoint creates two congruent segments. Now we're going to look at a bisector. So in this case, I'm having DE and it bisects GH. So what we're saying is if we want to translate this into nice normal language, I can say DE is cutting GH into half. So if I look, I'm cutting GH, so I can say GF is congruent to FH. And that's all I can say about it. And my reasoning would be a segment bisector creates two congruent segments. Good. Now, BA is perpendicular to CD. Remember, that's a key thing. Whenever I have perpendicular, I've got two statements, two reasons. We need to tell ourselves what type of angles perpendicular lines create. Well, if I'm saying BA is perpendicular to CD, I have right angles. I have a right angle here, and I have a right angle here. I'm going to number them, 1 and 2. But the thing is, I have to say that they're right angles. So, step 1, angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. My reasoning, perpendicular lines create right angles. Now, I know right angles are all 90 degrees, so what I can now say is that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And my reasoning is all right angles are 90 degrees, or what I like to say, all right angles are congruent. Beautiful. Now, CD and AB intersect at E. Well, if you notice, I didn't really give you one of these in the notes. So what I want you to do is whenever you see this visual, you got vertical angles. I got vertical angles. I have vertical angles right here and here. So I can say 3 and 4 are congruent. So I can say angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. And my reasoning, all vertical angles are congruent. Well, next one, number 5, triangle GHI is isosceles with vertex angle H. Well, we know our key word is isosceles, and I told you got to have two statements, two reasons. Well, in an isosceles triangle, we know that our opposite sides are congruent, so I can say GH and HI are congruent. And my reasoning would be, an isotriangle or an isosceles triangle has two congruent sides. Our next one. In an isosceles triangle, we also know our base angles are congruent. So I could say angle G and angle I are congruent. If you want, you can also number them. We can number them 5 and 6, or you can say G and I. So you say angle 5 congruent to angle 6. And my reasoning would be, an isosceles triangle has two congruent base angles. Next, VT is a perpendicular bisector. So if I look, I have a perpendicular, which means I have to have 90-degree angles. So if I look, VT is my perpendicular bisector of triangle SVU. So if I look, I can say that I have a right angle here and here. So I can say angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. And my reasoning, perpendicular bisector creates right angles. Thing is, if they're right angles, they got to be congruent. So I can say angle 1 congruent to angle 2. My reasoning, all right angles are congruent. Now, I have a bisector. What that means is I'm cutting that segment in half. So I'm cutting SU in half. So if I look, I can say ST is congruent to TU. And my reasoning, a perpendicular bisector creates two congruent segments. Good. Now, CD is an altitude of triangle ABC. Altitudes are a keyword. We know altitudes are our highest, so those are going to make the right angles. If you look, I've got a right angle at D. So I have a right angle here and here. I'm going to name them 1 and 2. So if I wanted to, I can say angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. And my reasoning would be an altitude creates two right angles. And now I can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because they are both right angles. So I know all right angles are congruent. Good. Now, that's it. That's all you can say about the altitude. So 2 statements, 2 reasons. Now, last but not least, we have a median. I know that a median creates 2 congruent segments. It's sort of like a midpoint, but a little different. It creates a midpoint. And it's a median of triangle CEB. So BD is the median triangle CEB, so it's breaking up ED and DC. So I can say ED congruent to DC, and the reasoning, a median creates 2 congruent segments. And that's it. And that's what your quiz is going to look like. You're basically going to be given some of these images with some state givens. You need to make conclusions. If you have any questions, email myself or Miss Daniel. Have a great day, ladies.